All right, Danny, I appreciate the introduction, but really it's not important who I am right now. What's most important is that for you guys as retailers, over the last 10 plus years, literally tens of millions of dollars that I've seen retailers spending on this channel, I've identified what I believe are the 10 most common mistakes that retailers are making that are costing you guys money. You're losing money hand over fist. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to run through these 10 mistakes with you. Before I do that, though, I want to just get a quick show of hands in the room. Is any merchant spending $5,000 a month on Google AdWords? Anybody spending $10,000 a month on Google AdWords? Maybe $25,000 a month on Google AdWords? Guys, Google as a company, 87% of their revenue is driven by paid search. And they're going to get their share of the pie either way. So what I want to do here is, before I jump into these common mistakes, because we're in Vegas, I want to make a bet with everybody in the room that's already spending money on Google AdWords. Here's my wager with you. If you listen to what I say today and you take notes and you go back and you apply what you have learned, I will bet you, I'll give you odds of 100 to 1, that if you apply what I'm going to run through with you guys today, it's going to improve your efficiency. You're going to make more money as a result. And that's what we're in business for, right? We want to make profit. It's not necessarily to feed the Google monster. So all of that being said, let's jump into it. The first mistake, and by the way, I'm going to do this almost like Sports Center, where it's top 10 plays of the day. I'm going to save possibly the most surprising one for the end. And that one, I believe, is the most common mistake that I see. So we'll work our way down to that one. But lack of clear conversion tracking. A mantra for us. If you can measure something, you can improve it. I can't tell you how many accounts I've seen, even here at the show. I've met merchants that are yet to implement conversion tracking within Google AdWords. So the mistake, lack of clear conversion tracking. If you cannot measure something, you cannot improve it. One more show of hands. How many people flew into Vegas on an airplane? All right, me too. So here's the deal. Imagine that pilot for a second lost all forms of measurement. You're up in the sky, doesn't know altitude, doesn't know distance, doesn't know speed they're going. Imagine that pilot loses his eyesight or her eyesight in the moment. That's the analogy of what you should be thinking about if you don't have conversion tracking in Google AdWords. You are flying blind. And remember what I said, these are mistakes that are leading retailers to lose money hand over fist. If you don't have accurate conversion tracking in the UI itself, you are missing the boat from day one. I work with retailers spending anywhere from $5,000 up to $600,000 a month. That's what we've done. And I will tell you that I reviewed an account where this merchant had spent $600,000 over December of last year. $600,000. No conversion tracking. Blows my mind. It happens more than you know, so take notes. This is the most important one before we cross the start line. The next one is weak Google Shopping setup. The keyword there is setup. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with product listing ads. When executed correctly, Google Shopping will yield on average a lower cost per click and a higher conversion rate than the average text ad. So if you marry low cost per click with high conversion rate, by default what you're getting is low cost per sale and more profit in your back pocket. So this one is really, really important right now because if you're not aware, Google is forcing an upgrade in the month of August. If you're running traditional product listing ads right now, Google's going to force an upgrade to their new Google Shopping platform. The good news here is that Google is giving us as merchants a lot more control over how we manage our product listing ads, our Google Shopping campaigns. And control is a keyword you should write down and put a big star next to it because when you give control to Google, Google is going to get more clicks as a result. Remember I said 87% of their revenue driven by clicks. And so it's in their best interest. And if there's any Googlers in the room, I love you guys, man, but don't be evil. Got tossed out the window, I believe, when Google went public, and they're accountable to shareholders. They want to get that share price up as high as they can, and if 87% of their revenue is click-driven, they need to get more clicks. So control. And if you wait until August and they force the upgrade, they're going to get control. The good news, though, for you guys is if you take control, 99 times out of 100, when you take control away from Google, you can make more sales. It's a fantastic platform. Remember slide number 1, if you can measure things, you can improve them. It applies the whole way throughout this presentation. There's a common thread through every single slide. And for me, it's the fundamental thought, the conscious thought that you should have in your mind when you are managing your AdWords spend. And it's really investing 101. You want to invest in the areas where you're getting the best possible return. When you can identify those areas, you want to pour more gasoline on the flame that's already burning, right? You want to get more of that. But at the same time, you also want to identify the areas where you're not getting good return. So that's the common thread that's going to run through all of these things. So what is the mistake? It's weak setup. I looked at a merchant's account. They were dealing in the home industry, home renovation supplies type industry. That was their business. That was where they were competing. They had 45,000 SKUs. It's not uncommon. I'm sure there are merchants in the room right now that carry hundreds of thousands of SKUs. And these guys had 45,000 SKUs. And I asked the merchant, does the price point fluctuate across the board? He said, absolutely. I said, what is the most cheapest, what's the lowest cost item that you carry? He said, well, a couple dollars. And how about the most expensive, a couple thousand? The weak Google shopping setup that he had was that he was treating all products as being created equal. And that's the most common one that I see, by the way. It's probably 7 out of 10. So I'm guessing all of those hands that were raised earlier, if you're running product listing ads or new Google shopping campaigns, you are probably treating all products as being created equal. The opportunity there is to be the 3 out of the 10 that are not. You can get ahead of the curve here, but it's all about that setup. So I'll keep moving on here. Hidden money leaks. This is one of my favorites, only because of the multiple trapdoors in any given Google account where, again, it's designed to get Google more clicks. And I don't hate Google. Please don't take me wrong here. I love Google. But you got to know where to look and how to look. So at the keyword level, think about just fundamental. What happens when somebody has a need, consumer recognizes they have a need, the next phase of the buying cycle is to gather information. And most likely that means they're going to search on Google. And so it's keyword driven is my point. At the keyword level, if you can measure at the keyword level, you can subsequently identify that which is not working and also identify that which is working. An example of that which is not working, I did a review for a merchant who was spending $100,000 in the boating industry. $100,000 a month, that is. And when I asked him what was his biggest pain point, he said, I think I'm spending too much money. I don't know that I'm getting the best return for my investment. So what that led me to do was at the keyword level, run a very simple filter to say, show me all the keywords in this account over an extended date range that have not driven a sale. Simply have not driven a sale, and this particular merchant was willing to spend $50 to drive a sale in the first place. So I had 2 parameters for my filter. Show me all the keywords that have spent at least $50 and have not converted. And I came out with a number. Then I said, show me all the keywords that have converted, but they have spent more than $50 to do so. And therefore, it was profit prohibitive. So these 2 very fundamental filters yielded, out of the $100,000, it showed $60,000 of questionable spend. How many of you guys do you think are flushing money down the toilet right now because you're not leveraging the control that Google gives you as the merchant? Remember, if you can measure it, you can improve it. The next one I want to talk about in the same breath almost is holding back your winners. So still at the keyword level, you can run a different kind of filter. And this is also one of my entry-level filters. Everybody should run this, I believe. Just good AdWords 101. And the filter there was show me all the keywords that have converted at least one time. Their cost per sale was less than the merchant had described as the maximum. So let's use $50. And so the filter would have been, show me any keyword that has converted at least one time where the cost per sale was less than $50, so it's profitable. And then one more parameter to say, they've also been positioned worse than position 3. Now, when I talk about position 3, when you imagine in your mind's eye a Google search engine results page, top 3 positions, right? The reason I'm pointing that out is because Google has told me, on average, 84% of the available search clicks go to positions 1, 2, and 3. So think about my filter that I set up. Any keyword that's converted, it's converted profitably, but it's outside of the top 3 positions. And we identified for that merchant, I believe it was about 85 sales, average value per sale, it was $100. And so they were in position 3.5 on average, which means if they simply bid up, they can access more traffic on proven performers. So you're holding back your winners because you're not measuring, therefore you're not able to improve. Default settings, one of my favorites. So geography is the first one I'm gonna think about here. Most merchants that I speak to are targeting all of the US. So when you look in the settings, that's what it looks like at the campaign level. You're targeting the US. Now, the limitation here is that you are, by default, treating all states as being created equal. You're targeting all of the US, and you've got one bid, right? So you're treating all 50 states as being created equal. I have yet to see an account where the conversion rate is a flat line. It's the same for every one of the 50 states. So think about that guiding thought that I spoke about earlier. You want to identify the areas where your return on investment is good, and you want to identify the areas where your return on investment is not so great. And then you want to reallocate your budget so that you can maximize your return. With this particular setting, you want to be able to leverage, once you do a geographic segmentation, and by the way, this is not rocket science. This is there at your fingertips. You just have to know where to look and how to look. You can run a quick geographic segmentation and identify the states that are doing the very best for you. And when I do that, I also look at that average position column, by the way, because if I do it that way, I can also say, hey, where am I missing out on 84% of the available traffic? In the same breath, where are the states where I'm converting or I'm not converting? If I am converting, it's costing me more than I'm willing to spend. This is such a common one. This is probably 9 out of 10 merchants that I look at. You're targeting all of the US, therefore you're treating all states as being created equal. Now, sticking with this mistake because it's in the default settings, the next one I want to identify is by time. And by time, notice that it's buried in the advanced settings. There is nothing advanced about this, but it's a default setting, which means if you don't change it, this is how it is from day one. And so when we click on that little plus box in the settings, most people, if they don't change it, they are showing ads all the time. Just like if you're targeting all of the US and you're treating all states as being created equal, if you're targeting all ads all the time, what you're doing is you're treating all days of the week as being created equal with regards to conversion rate, and you're also treating all hours of the day as being created equal. So you're bidding the same. Your level of aggression is the same regardless of conversion rate, either by hour of day or by day of week. You guys, I hope you're thinking about your business right now. Think about when you are busy. Think about when things are flying off the shelves or out the warehouse. My guess is that it's probably Monday to Thursday, and this is across the board. I realize every industry, every merchant's a little bit different, but this is what I see most often. Conversion rate by time is a bell curve. In the early hours of the day, conversion rate's low, therefore cost per sale is high. And as you get into the business hours, your conversion rate starts to pick up. Want to look at that average position column as well, because all of these things, remember, you can measure it, you can improve it. I worked with a client who sold hammocks, and that particular client, when we started, they were doing all of these things. So just because you are selling a product that is so affected by seasonality, nobody's buying a hammock in the winter months, right? Especially not the winter we just had. So for that person specifically, we wanted to look at it on a state-by-state level. You know, Florida, the southern states tend to warm up quicker. I think I was in Orlando not too long ago. It was about 85 degrees in Orlando. The exact same day it was snowing in Minneapolis. So in Orlando, people are starting to think about hammocks. Minneapolis, probably not so much. So think about your industry, think about your business model, and you can leverage this stuff to your benefit. What you're doing is you're taking control away from Google, right? It's pretty straightforward. But simplicity is good because most people can leverage it if you understand it. If you have the time and the expertise, you can do this kind of thing. Moving on to mistake number 6, again, default settings. By the way, settings get applied at the campaign level. So if you're thinking about Google AdWords, this is one level down from account level. If you drop down, you're at the campaign level. the 30,000-foot view, so to speak. Settings are so critical because they affect volume of traffic that you're going to get, and they affect conversion rate thereof. So that's a perfect place to start. And these two mistakes, by the way, this is at the settings level, this is campaign level. So ad rotation. This affects if you are testing two different calls to action in an ad group. I'm going to go back to that structure quickly, so hang in there with me. At the very top, account level, then you've got the campaign level. Below that is the ad group level. The ad group level is where you write your specific ad copy. And a best practice is to always be rotating 2 ads at a time, testing different calls to action, testing free shipping or whatever phrase resonates so that you're measuring and you're improving, right? So unfortunately, if you do have 2 or more ads in rotation and you have not ventured into this, which by the way is also buried in the advanced settings, this is almost Yahoo-like. And I say that because I respect Google and Yahoo back a couple of years ago were doing some very sneaky things. That's where that comes from. But this is almost Yahoo-like on Google's terms because if you hit the little plus box for ad rotation, the default is optimized for clicks. A trapdoor. This is sucking your money and leaving sales on the table. I looked at an account the other day. A merchant was spending $10,000 a month. And this affects how the ads rotate, right? So if this particular merchant, I think she had 3 ads in rotation. And the ad that was getting most of the impressions, being served most often, had the best click-through rate. That's what optimized for clicks means. If you can see it there, it says show ads expected to provide more clicks. And I hate this because it even says ideal setting for most advertisers. If you are a merchant trying to sell product, that is garbage. That is ideal for Google and no one else. Think about it like this. If you could have 10,000 people walk through your brick and mortar store every day, 10,000 people, and 1,000 of them buy something from you. Or you can have 5,000 people walk through the door and 2,000 of them buy from you. Which one would be better for your business? It's obvious. You want more sales. That's what I'm talking about. So when you optimize for clicks, you're basically optimizing for traffic. So this particular merchant, I look at one ad group. Admittedly, it's the ad group spending the most money, but it might have only been 20% of the total ad spend. And the ad that was getting served the most was 90% of the impressions had the worst conversion rate, which means that it was the one that was costing the most per sale, which means they were making the least amount of profit per sale. They were giving all the money to Google, right? So I looked at the other 2 ads in rotation, and one of them had a much better conversion rate, a slightly lower click-through rate. But by virtue of the all-important click-through rate, that ad was being strangled. It was being suffocated. The little flames that were flickering were getting no oxygen. So I did some quick math, and I noticed that if I said to this merchant, I said, hey, took out my calculator, I said, hey, if this ad, the one that had the best conversion rate, had received 90% of the impressions, you would have got, I think it was something like 20 more sales in that 30-day period. And for that merchant, average order value was around the $100 mark. So 20 more sales, $2,000, like left on the table, purely because of a setting. One of the most common mistakes that I see. So definitely make note of this one. Mistake number 7, weak mobile targeting. You guys are probably sick and tired of hearing about mobile, because I absolutely have been over the last 4 or 5 years. But the reason I included this one is because there has been a fundamental shift in consumer behavior domestically here in the US. That fundamental shift in consumer behavior is that at some point in 2014, most likely in the 4th quarter, on any given day, there will be more mobile-driven search queries being executed on any given day than there will be desktop-driven queries. So let that sink in for just a second. More mobile-driven search queries on any given day than desktop-driven search queries. Irrefutable. That's what's happening. Now, if you are ignoring mobile, which a lot of merchants are doing, because when you analyze conversion rate by device in a vacuum, historically, conversion rate on mobile has been really low. And I'm standing here telling you, hey, invest in the areas where conversion rate is high. What I'm saying is that it's changing, and if you're ignoring it, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there's every likelihood that you might be out of business as a result. I think it's that important. We have a client who the targeted demographic are female aged 18 to 24. This particular client sells body jewelry. And this past year over year in the fourth quarter, conversion rate on mobile devices went up by a factor of 4. That's a huge shift, which means that not only is that particular audience searching on their phone, but they're now also starting to transact on their phone. And the whole friction in the process of buying something on your phone, I believe we're going to see that change too. Because if you have a smartphone, think about how easy it is to download an app. You really just have to put in your password, right? That's it. Your username is already stored. And you can click purchase, and that's all that happens. There's no friction in that process. The problem now, which I believe is going to be resolved fairly soon, is things like PayPal and Google Wallet. I even had a conversation with a representative from MasterCard recently, where they have the technology now where it is a one-click purchase on a mobile device. So all of these things combined, if you're ignoring mobile targeting right now, you are giving away market share, I believe. Google's betting big on mobile, by the way. Even in Google Analytics, there are now reports where you can track cross-device tracking. So it's the notion that people start on their phones, and then when they're ready to purchase something, they put the phone down, and they finish the transaction on their desktop or their laptop or their tablet. It's happening. I'm going to summarize this by saying, what is the mistake? The mistake is that you are ignoring it or the targeting is weak. That's the mistake. And if anybody has read a Jim Collins book, it's our Bible internally. Good to Great is a fantastic read. One of the fundamentals in a later book that he wrote was shoot a bullet before you shoot a cannonball, meaning dip your toe in the water. Just test it out before you overinvest. And what I would do if I was a merchant right now, I would absolutely have a website that renders on a phone. There are a lot of merchants out there or vendors rather, in the expo hall. Go have a chat with them. They're out there. But if you don't have a site that renders on a mobile device, you are way behind the curve. If you do, if you've got a half-decent product and a half-decent website, then if I were you and you're not testing mobile, you're ignoring it completely, shoot a bullet before you shoot a cannonball. Just test it with your best-performing keywords or your best-performing products. See what happens. This fundamental shift in consumer behavior is happening, whether you like it or not. All right, moving on to mistake number 8. If there's anybody in the audience that doesn't understand the concept of remarketing, this graphic is pretty straightforward. You have the ability as a merchant, if somebody comes to your website and then they leave, you can remarket to them when they are browsing other websites. And it's kind of big brother. It's a little bit intrusive at times. I know I spoke to somebody the other day and they said, man, I went to one site and now I just get hounded by all this advertising. And I believe that's the wrong way to do it. Let me tell you some stats why I believe that it's not a question of if you do it, because I believe it's a necessity. It's not a question of if you do it, it's a question of how you do it. So you don't have to be intrusive. We have been running remarketing under the umbrella of Google under Google AdWords since it was available to us. And what we have found that on average, when executed correctly, remarketing can add anywhere from 5 to 15% additional profitable conversion volume when executed correctly, right? So what I'm saying is it's delicious icing on top of a delicious cake. And the question is how you do it. So I can have a chat with anybody afterwards. We'll do Q&A or chat in the expo hall, but these are things, especially remarketing, I don't think you can avoid it. I don't think you can ignore it because it's proven to me. I know it works. You just have to be able to know how to do it. And then mistake number 9, this is neglecting Bing and Yahoo. If you have been working with Ad Center, which is Microsoft Ad Center, which powers Bing and Yahoo, you might be fed up, as most merchants do, because the platform is just clunky and frustrating in comparison to Google AdWords. There's a silver lining to that cloud, and the silver lining is that people get frustrated and they tend to ignore it. But think about this for a second. Domestically in the US, There are 75 million people getting online every day. And depending on the industry that you're in, Bing and Yahoo can account for 22 to 28% is about the spread of domestic search traffic. Typically, it's an older audience. My mom, as an example, she's 62, and if she gets a new laptop, it's going to have Windows, it's going to have Explorer, and the default engine is going to be Bing. My mom's not going to change over to a different engine. She's going to use what she has. And so typically, if you're targeting an older demographic, you can leverage more out of Bing and Yahoo. If it's a younger demographic, I'm not saying ignore it. I'm just saying that's the reality of what we are seeing with Bing and Yahoo. And we have a client who targets 65 and above. And they spend every month as much on Bing and Yahoo as they do on Google. So ignoring that, you're probably leaving a lot on the table. Definitely leaving money on the table by ignoring it. And that brings me to the final mistake. And I said it was probably the most surprising one, but it's probably the most prevalent one. And before I get into it, any merchant in the room right now who is, in addition to driving sales through the shopping cart, if you are driving a percentage of your revenue, a percentage of your sales through consumers picking up the phone and calling you, this one's for you. And it's the vast majority. It's always kind of a, it's just it's a question of what percentage of your total revenue is driven through inbound phone calls. So here's what I'm saying. A lack of keyword to phone call tracking. Remember how I started today. If you can measure something, you can improve it. So if you can measure the keywords that are making the phone ring, you can certainly improve performance in one of two very important ways. Number one, you can identify that which is not working and save some money. And number two, you can identify that which is working, what is making the phone ring. And then you can make the phone ring more. So think about that in the context of your business right now. If you're doing percentage of inbound phone calls and you're closing deals over the phone, here's what happens. Somebody clicks on, searches, they click on an AdWords ad. This is our ad, so that might be what they see. And they click on the ad, they take that leap of faith, and they land on your landing page. And instead of transacting through the shopping cart, they then pick up the phone and call you. About 2 or 3 years ago, I met a merchant in Orlando. And they sat down, and I said, guys, what's your biggest pain point with Google AdWords? Same as the guy in the boating space. I'm overspending. Google's making tens of thousands of dollars off me. I don't think I'm getting the justified rate of return. Excuse me. I said, how much are you willing to spend to make a sale? Remember the hidden money leaks? Remember the money going down the toilet? I went to the keyword level. I said, if you think you're overspending, let's just take a look at the keyword level. And we ran a quick filter, and they were spending at that time, it was either $100,000 or $120,000. Either way, it was a lot. And they had been spending $170 to $180. So they were already trimming it back. And I ran this filter, and I said, guys, there's 20 grand. I'm like patting myself on the back. I found 20 grand in 2 minutes. And the merchant looked at me, and he said, yeah, but then what you don't understand is that I do 60 to 65% of my revenue through inbound phone call generation. I said, okay, well, are you tracking that? He said, no, I didn't even know that was possible. That's an industry in of itself. The good news for any merchant is that there's like the technology leaps and bounds that they've done in the last 6 to 12 months, which means for you guys, you can get a very cost-effective solution to measure the keywords that are making the phone ring or not making the phone ring. And we helped that client. We helped them introduce this software, and I went down there probably 2 months later, and I walked into the boardroom, and the guy was like, hey, Dan, this is helping you guys to manage our spend, but we're getting a recording of every single sales call that our reps are making, and we're listening, and we're improving their conversion rate. So multiple benefits here. My point is this, what's the mistake? The mistake is if you're not measuring it, you're not going to be able to improve it. And for me, we always want to go after the areas where you can have the biggest impact, right? The lowest hanging fruit, so to speak. If you're doing more than 20% of your revenue through inbound phone calls, there are solutions out there, and I'll give you some ranges of spend. If you're spending less than $20,000 a month, it's probably going to cost you no more than $300 to get a very effective solution in place. And if you're spending 20 grand a month, and we run these filters that I worked with you earlier on, my guess is we're going to find anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, conservatively, of what I would define as highly questionable spend, because it's either not driving a sale or it is driving a sale, but it's doing so at a rate that is profit prohibitive. So think about that. If you're spending about 20 grand a month, you've probably got at least $4,000 of questionable spend. Take 300 bucks and invest it in a system that allows you to measure it. It's going to pay for itself and then some. Guys, I made that wager with you at the beginning, and I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. What's next? That's the question. What do you do next? You have to analyze. You have to go into these numbers and leverage the control that Google gives you. I do this every single day. I look at accounts every single day. And people are just not leveraging the control that Google gives you. Google AdWords, in my opinion, is a fighter jet. It is a fighter jet that gives you so much control. You can do such cool things with it. But most people fly it like a biplane. And that's what powers Google. They're going to get their share price, their click, either way. But as merchants, get clicks that drive traffic that sells and converts. And that's my message to you guys today.